1 2 1 2. Yes, indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in, welcome in. I am the crate digger of the Mighty Sound Champion crew. I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for coming to hang out. It is 8 o'clock here in the heart of the Midwest, Columbus, Ohio, where I am live streaming this seminar slash tutorial from. It is right 8 o'clock on the dot, so I'm going to give folks a chance to start coming in, dropping in, falling in, getting comfortable, and all those things. I want to share a couple of things. In the chat, there is a link that I've shared in the chat. That link is to a PDF file. That PDF file allows you to click on those hot links, and if you have not downloaded either OBS audio monitor or the VB cables plugin that we'll be using, those are the three kind of downloads that we'll be using. If you haven't downloaded those, you can do that now while we give a couple people a couple more minutes to come in, or if you just want to wait and go through, I'll have a screen share so you'll be able to see OBS as we go through this tutorial. So if you're using your laptop to watch this and you don't want to go screen to screen and all those things, feel free to hold on to that PDF and then use it as a tool to get to those links quickly later. With that being said, it's 8 o'clock on a Thursday evening. A lot of you all have had to work today, so I'm not going to hold you. We're going to get right to it. It's going to be recorded, so if people miss it, they can always catch the recording. Also, at the conclusion of this tutorial, I'll be sharing a link to a survey. The survey is very brief, but I ask you, please, 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 complete the survey. It helps me be better at this, and ideally helps me prepare if I do another one, what you guys would like to see or hear in that. And when you complete the survey, you will get a response email saying thank you for doing the survey, and here's the link to all the slides. So basically the slideshow, the PDFs of what you see shared today will all be in that thank you for completing your survey. So, reciprocity. You do something for me, I do something for you. So with that being said, we're going to get right to it. I am known as the Crate Digger. I am a DJ, I'm a producer, I'm an instructor, I'm a musician, I'm an audio engineer. I'm a lot of other things, and I always just tell people it depends on the day or the time which hat I have on. But with that being said, everything that I do is with the mission or the guise, I won't even say even guise, just the mission and the intention of using music to help improve the quality of life. Now, I intentionally do that through a hip-hop prism. So as a DJ, I'm very much a traditional hip-hop DJ. Traditional in the sense of, you may see behind me, I do have, those are actual records. I do still play vinyl. I also use a laptop. But when you see me performing, 9 times out of 10, you'll see me behind 2 turntables and a mixer. With that being said, I want to share a couple of caveats and kind of points of order, or just full disclosure. All right, first and foremost, this is not a paid promotion. And I'm reading this, so I've written this out so I don't get long-winded. But this is not a paid promotion, all right? I'm not receiving anything in exchange for my advocacy of OBS, all right? I use it as a creative tool, and I believe it's a creative and helpful tool for many of my peers as well. So I'm always speaking well of OBS, and then I talk about the things that I feel that OBS doesn't do well as well. But with that being said, OBS is a subject that frequently arises in the Content Creators of Color Collective. Shouts out to my C4 folks in the building. We have lots of convos, and oftentimes there's a lack of understanding around what OBS can do as a platform, as a standalone platform, or as a step in a larger creative process. So that's part of why, specifically my man Sean Smith, a.k.a. S Squared, has always asked me to help him with some of the OBS things that he's tried to mess around with, and things that I know. And he's always telling me that I have a knowledge base that I need to share. So it's always been in the back of my mind to do that. But it kind of got accelerated, and I'll speak to that point in a second. Next, as I stated, I'm a multidiscipline creative, but I do not consider myself a podcaster. No matter what people say of me, what people think of the different things I may do, I do not consider myself a podcaster by title. And that's not, that's not a negative, or that's a thing with no kind of value to it. It's just a statement. It's a factual statement. So I say that, though, because my perspective on the thing that we call podcasting is unique, because oftentimes I am approaching my perspective from the outside looking in. But with that being said, many people, including a good friend of mine and a good friend of many of yours as well, Crystal Hill, has stated and shared that podcasters need to be looking at diversifying content types to ensure the long-term success of their brands. All right. Now, there's a lot of space for what that discussion may look like, but it is not something that's going to be happening in the future. It's something that's happening now. And I feel like that is another reason why I felt like this OBS tutorial needed to happen ASAP. Once again, aside from not being paid or receiving anything from anything or anybody associated with OBS, I'm not an expert. All right. I have a lot of experience with many applicable uses of OBS, and I'm just trying to share the info that I have based on my experiences as just kind of contribute to the common base or the common knowledge base or the library of the community. All right. OBS may or may not be something that adds to your creative process. I'm going to just try to share some things and let you guys decide for yourselves. All right. The next thing that I want to share, soundsprofitable.com released research recently. And if I don't press the wrong button, here we go. That research that they released, some of those results added to why I thought this tutorial needed to happen sooner than later. All right. Now, based on their survey demo, 75% of their respondents said their favorite platform for podcast engagement is YouTube. All right. That means, among other things, they love to see podcasts. All right. Of this same demographic, 47% of their time engaging podcasts is with video content. Now, that could be anything from clips from a show, promos for an upcoming show, full episodes. All right. It doesn't really matter the specific type of content. It's video content. All right. And following conversations is easier with video content, according to the respondents. And then lastly, connecting with hosts and guests is key to long-term success. I think I won't say it goes without being said, but I think we can all agree that people come for the content and they stay because they either find themselves being reflected or appreciative of the host or the guests, or, we always have those hate watchers, those hate listeners who find themselves diametrically opposed to everything presented and they love to listen to argue back. Whatever the reasoning is, we know that the people, the host and the guests, are what really make or break the success of your podcast. Now, even though this is I'm talking about podcasting, it's not solely for podcasters. OBS can be used for live streamers, podcasters, multimedia creatives. All right. So, if you work in any space that incorporates anything visual, not video, but visual, OBS is something that could be helpful for you. All right. And of course, putting a face to the voice or the mannerisms of the personas is important and it matters. All right. So, for those who may not be able to tell by my parlance and my cadence and all those things, or don't know me personally, I have experience as an educator. Specifically, I spent 2 years teaching middle school. I taught a music production class that I wrote the whole coursework myself, so it aligned with state standards, testing standards, and all those things. So, one thing we learned is kind of like just the classroom management. All right. With that being said, our overview for today incorporates 5 basic goals that we have. All right. First goal: optimizing audio and visual assets. Once again, when I say visual, I mean visual, and when I say video, I mean specifically video, because they aren't always the same. Video is visual, but all visuals aren't video. All right. We'll talk about that a little later. 2, using scene transitions. Now, OBS comes with 2 basic scene transitions, all right? And we can always just use those to move from scene to scene, shot to shot. But I'm going to offer a couple of suggestions on using both these simple kind of default scene transitions and ones that you can bring in if you so choose to, more as narrative tools. So we're not just moving from shot to shot, but we're using the scene transitions to help tell the story and help our episodes or whatever the production is flow. All right. 3, we're going to be incorporating our overlays and graphics to maintain a brand presence. All right. 4, we're going to be prepared to live stream or preparing our content for post-production. All right. That's one thing that I love about OBS is whether I'm doing a full live stream, a one and done, and if I mess up live, or if I'm doing something that I'm recording and I'm going to be chopping down or doing other post-production things with it, OBS can facilitate both. All right. And lastly, flex as a guest. And I very much mean that. using OBS as an enhancement for third-party platforms like Zoom, StreamYard, Ecamm, Instagram recently, and so just because I may not be running the production doesn't mean OBS may not be something that I want to use to help whatever video or visual elements I'm putting out into the world, especially if it's going to have my name, my face, my brand on it. All right. So once again, the PDF in the comments has the hot links to the software. If you haven't downloaded it, you can use that PDF to get you quickly to the software points. All right. Now, I'm not going to go through any of the downloading or installation parts tonight. All right. I think everybody involved, if you can download Zoom and install Zoom, you can handle doing all these things. Now, we'll walk you through a couple of little parts as we come to them, but I'm not going to show you how to download it, how to install it. All right. Now, with that being said, we're going to get it going. Once again, I want to welcome everybody in. If you're just falling in, just come on in. We're still at the overview, but we're moving through. All right. First thing we're going to talk about when we say OBS. OBS is the name of the platform. So OBS stands for Open Broadcaster Software. One thing that you need to know, which is one of the most important things that brought me to OBS, that is free. Say what? Yes, free. F-R-E-E, free. Not furry, free. You do not have to spend a dime to download and install OBS. If you ever have somebody trying to sell you a copy of OBS, they're trying to scam you. Don't do it. Reconsider. Read your literature. Sure. You know the rest. So, do not ever pay for OBS. Go online and download it, whether you have a Mac, whether you have a PC. If you're running Linux, I don't want to know why you're running Linux, but if you happen to be running Linux, you can do OBS on Linux as well, all right? So with that being said, generally speaking, I did some very, very basic research. My very basic research taught me or showed me, Ecamm is roughly $192 a year once you get past the free trial, all right? And it has some stipulations on things you can and can't do, how many guests you can have, length of different things, blah, blah, blah. StreamYard, roughly $240 a year. Restream, roughly $190 a year, all right? And all of those, from my very basic research, are the low-end or basic packages, all right? Once again, OBS is free. Now, if you're using any of these other platforms, I am not shading them. I'm not shading them. I'm not shading them. I'm not. However, I, who do a lot of live streaming, namely as a DJ on Twitch and other spaces, during the pandemic specifically, I would do a lot of engagements on Zoom. I would do a lot of engagements on other platforms to engage both classrooms, parent and student groups, activities. I did some fundraisers, things with college alumni. So I say all that to say I have a very, very large quantity of engagement when it comes to live streaming. And part of why I chose OBS over anything else is because it was free and I didn't have to pay to bring in guests and other things and do some of the things that you have to pay using Ecamm, StreamYard, Restream, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Once again, if you're using those things, I will let you decide if you continue using those things once I show you what OBS can do. But if you choose to use them, OBS can still be part of your process should you find it helpful. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're just going to talk about the layout. All right. And get to it. So what I'm going to show you now is my screen share of OBS. All right. So when you download and install OBS and open it up, this is likely the first thing you'll see. All right. Now, I'm currently running OBS 30.0.2, depending on what hardware, what hardware, meaning what platform, PC, Mac, Linux, and what operating system number or kind of where you are at in the different levels of that operating system will kind of determine what OBS determines or what OBS suggests is the most current OBS version that is stable for you. All right. With that being said, everything that you see here is what OBS looks like out of the box, except for this. All right. I have named this profile because I wanted to have it set up. All right. So just real quick, we're going to go through what OBS looks like. All right. Here in this center section, the big black box is your program screen. That's what your audience sees. All right. And as you add things and do different things, they will show up in that black box. That's basically your screen, your TV, your monitor, what the audience sees and what you're sending out. All right. If we move to the lower left corner, and we're going to go left to right, this is our scenes. Our scenes are kind of like our shots. So whether we have one camera, or we have two cameras, we have intros and outros, we have pause, or, in case of emergency screens or whatever different shots we have, they all show up as separate scenes in this column. All right. Now we can arrange them in single file columns. We can change the width of these and make them side by side. There's a lot of different things we can do to customize how we look, but they all stay in this section. All right. Moving to the right, our sources. All right. Our sources is all the ingredients, the stuff that goes into baking the cake that is our production. All right. Whether it's our mics, our cameras, logos, video files, browser elements, and so much more. But all the stuff that makes up what we see shows up here. All right. This section is called Audio Monitor. I will say some of you may not see this initially because you haven't installed, or you may have installed, depending on where you're at, the Audio Monitor plugin. If you have not installed that Audio Monitor plugin, you will not see this section until that's installed. All right. Now, once again, that's Audio Monitor. The next section, which you will see, is your audio mixer. All right. That's where all of the different components that are sources, all the different sources that have audio components, they show up here. Now, I'll say this here and I'll probably say it again. Just because something doesn't have audio doesn't mean it doesn't have an audio component. Example, I can shoot a video and I can mute all the audio, and then that MP4 or MOV or whatever codec or format that video file is still has an audio channel in its codec, in its metadata, in its composition. Now, it will be silent, but it's still there, and it will show up in your audio mixer. All right? So keep that in mind. I see your question, Lisa. I'll come back to it in a second, but don't let me forget it if I go too far and don't get back to it, but I'll get back to it. Next thing you'll see is scene transitions. Our scene transitions will show up here. Once again, it comes with two quote-unquote stock transitions, cut and fade. I believe we all know what that is. And then the duration of our fade can be set in milliseconds. We can click on that and change it, or we can click on the arrows to get a more finite change, all right? And then far right side is our control panel, where we have our start streaming, start recording, some other buttons that we'll get to as well, all right? Settings. And there's a lot behind the under the trunk or under the hood, behind the curtain when it comes to settings, and we're not going to really go into that now because I think there's a word that plethora is the best word. There's a plethora of tutorials on YouTube that talk about OBS settings, and I feel like most of them can do a way better job than I can, in part because I find myself so determined to be helpful, I go a little too deep into certain things, and it becomes less helpful than I want to be. So we're not going to get into that. One thing I do want to mention here is where it says studio mode. If we click to studio mode, we see we have now 2 windows instead of 1. All right? Means we have a preview scene, meaning we get to see it before audience sees it, and we have our program scene, meaning, once again, what the audience sees. A lot of folks who are used to a more traditional production bay or control room knows you usually have your preview, whether it's one or a series of windows for preview, and then you push to program, depending on what your different options are, all right? I personally like to work outside of studio mode, all right, but we'll work back and forth as the night goes so you can have both. Quick stopping point. Lisa asked, do we need an audio monitor? Yes and no. There are ways that you can do things with OBS without using an audio monitor, but audio monitor comes in handy most when we want to move to the third portion of what we will use OBS for, and that is being able to use OBS with other platforms. So whether I want to go to Zoom, whether I want to go to StreamYard, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Now, there are a couple of caveats. So you don't have to have audio monitor, but I always suggest having it and understanding how to use it. So if you're ever in a situation where you need it, you're already equipped. All right. Stay ready. Don't got to get ready. All right. So everybody take a deep breath. Cool. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about what the actual project we're going to do during this tutorial is. All right, so I'm not going to just walk you through these things. We're going to actually build out a project. All right, and I want to say thank you to my brother Sean Smith, aka S Squared of drippinginblack.com. He has submitted some content and some assets that we'll use through this exercise. All right, now we are going to be building out the production for a podcast entitled the Urban Educators Forum Podcast. All right. Now, this podcast is, here's the overview of the podcast. The education landscape is changing dramatically, and the gap between students of color and other underrepresented groups is widening. Each session in the Urban Educator Forum, also known as the UEF, will inform the listener of relevant topics throughout all levels of education by having conversations with outstanding educators and poignant commentaries. All stakeholders will find something meaningful in each episode. Listeners will have ample opportunities to contribute to the village both on the podcast and social media. Iron sharpens iron, so come join us in the forum. The village awaits your arrival. All right, now that's the overview of the UEF. All right, the production of the UEF will have these components. All right, its format currently is recorded over Zoom. All right, all my scenes need to have branding of the UEF visible, and all the scenes. Let me skip that. Next part, we're going to build out 4 basic scenes. All right, the introduction scene with logo and theme song. We're going to have a single speaker branding on scene or a host shot. We're going to have a guest or a forum shot which has multiple presenters. When this says 2 to 4, including host. But if we need to have more, I'll show you how to add more. And then an outro and credits page with the theme song again. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to just start to populate based on that basic breakdown, all right? So the first thing we're going to do is here in scene, all right? Once again, OBS comes set up with a blank scene in spot. You always have to have a scene here even if it's empty, all right? So we know we're going to have 4 scenes. So I click the plus here to add. It's going to ask me the name, all right? First scene, intro, all right? Click the plus again. It's going to ask me to name it. We're going to call this one host. So that'll be for our host shot. Plus, to add another scene, we'll just call that forum because that'll be all of our guests and the host together. Plus, and we'll call this outro. All right. Or if I want to use this scene, I can control click or right click depending on what platform you're using. And then I can rename it, duplicate it, do other things. All right. So for now, we're just going to delete it because we don't need that scene called scene. All right. Now, once again, you can click the plus to add scenes, or if you make a mistake or need to delete a scene, highlight that scene, click the garbage can, all right? And if they are not in the order that you want them in, you can always click on them and move them in order. Now, theoretically, it doesn't matter what order they're in because you're going to click on your individual scenes as you need to move them. So they don't have to be in any sort of order. However, my mind works in a certain way. I put my scenes in order, at least as I build them out. And then, depending on what my different scenes are, all right, I move them around. So starting with our intro scene. Once again, our intro scene is going to be our logo and theme song. All right. Our host scene is going to be our host shot with more branding. Forum is going to be our guests with our host and branding. And then our outro is going to be branding, credits, and the theme song. All right. So now that we have the 4 scenes, let's move on. So now that we have our scenes set up, and even though they're all empty, they're still set up. All right. But we have to talk about sources. So now the next thing we're going to do is talk about our sources and assets, whether they be audio, visual, or our filters and effects. All right. And we're going to go through these in order. So we would start by hitting the plus, and you have all of these different options. All right. Audio input, browser, color source basically means a color box, and then we can move the box around and all these things. Images, screen captures, media sources, NDI, text, and video capture. And then if we had a grouping of assets or a series of assets we want to group together, we could group those together. All right. My apologies. I forgot to hit the other button. So once again, in sources, if I hit the plus, these are the different assets I would be, or types of assets that I would be able to add. All right. The type of asset that you want to add determines which of these that you would click on. All right. So most important to know right now at this basic level, audio input capture. That is your mics, whether it's a single mic, whether you have an interface like a Scarlett or a Rode, insert whatever caster you have, Behringer. It doesn't matter the brand or type. If you have an audio interface or an audio receiving component, it would be considered an audio input capture. For example, I have a Pioneer DJ S11 mixer. If I had my mixer plugged in to this computer, it would show up as a audio input source that I could choose if I so choose to. All right. Also, remember that audio comes from sources that are not always audio based. So for example, some of our cameras, media files, or if we have audio tracks, all of those things have audio components. So once again, they will bring audio into our mixer, even if they're not audio files. All right. Now, when we talk about our visual files, those include things like video capture, which is like cameras, mainly cameras, whether they be HDMI in, if you have an HDMI to USB converter, if you're using the actual camera on a laptop or a webcam. So basically, video capture device is mainly cameras, all right? If you have, once again, media like MOV files, MP4 files, those would be considered media sources, all right? So if you have like a clip, an intro clip that you want to run, you would click media source, all right? If you have images, once again, images are visual even though they're not video. Those have to be selected as images, still images, JPEGs, PNGs, JPJs, all of those still image types, images, and then if you have an image slideshow, you have to select slideshow, all right? If you have something that is browser-based, which includes, say you need to bring in a YouTube video, or you want to show your website, and instead of doing a screenshot, you just bring in the website itself. Or as I'm going to show you later, our guests. I'm going to bring guests in, and we're going to bring them in through a browser source, all right? You click on browser, and then when we do that later, I'll show you what that looks like. But that's the type of source that we would use. So once again, depending on the type of content you need to add, that determines what you use. And you can use a scene as a source. So if I build out a scene, I can bring that whole scene in as a source as well and add other things to it, all right? So for example, if I have a scene or that has a whole bunch of branding in it, I don't have to copy that for every scene. I may be able to basically bring in that scene as a source and put it in every subsequent scene without having to copy it through, all right? So once again, OBS has a functionality that's very helpful. All right, so now that I've gone through the scenes and the sources, we're not going to populate the sources based on what our project is asking us to do. All right, now one thing I'm going to tell you now is, to make this a little easier to understand, is as we populate, in this stage, we are not going to populate any logos yet. We're going to save that for the next, in a few steps. Right now, we're just going to populate audio and video. All right, and then we're going to talk about audio properties real quick as well. So once again, in our in our intro scene, we need to bring in the logo and our theme song. All right, and once again, shouts out to S Squared for helping sending over these assets to help us out. So we're going to start with, once again, we're not going to do the logo now, so we're going to bring in the theme song. All right, clicked on media source. All right, it's going to ask me, do I want to create new or do I want to add an existing? Because it's not already loaded up, I want to create new. I want to name it. Now, one thing is important. You can't name things the same name. Even if I have a scene and a source, even though those are different types of things, I can't have the same name for them. So all your names need to be different in some shape, form, or fashion. All right. So now I'm going to bring in my theme song, and it's asking me some information here. All right. It's basically asking me, do I want to loop it? For today's functionality, yes, I want my theme song to loop. So if the intro goes long or something happens, when it ends, it doesn't just go dead silence, it plays again. Restart playback when source becomes active. This basically asks me when I go to the source, or excuse me, when I go to the scene, do I want the source to start over or pick up where it was at? So for example, those of you who came in early, there was music playing during that waiting or introductory scene. If I were to go to a different scene and come back to it, because I do not have this marked or checked, it would pick up in the mix wherever it was at. It wouldn't start all over from the beginning. So if you want the track to start over every time you go back to it, so for example, if you have a gag screen that makes a funny face and it plays a sound effect, you want that sound effect to play from the beginning every time you go to that screen, no matter how long you're on the screen or how often you go back to it. Or if you have something that you want it to pick up where it left off, you don't want to select it. So once again, depending on the context of the content, you make your selection. For this, I don't want it to restart. I want to just pick up where we left off. And then for this file, the show nothing when playback ends is not important because it's an audio file. For visual files, we'll talk about that in a second, that is important. All right, so we're going to hit browse. I have already downloaded this stuff here on my drive. And because this is a certain type of media source, it's telling me all of the different types of files that are applicable. And you can see these still images and these data and documents and all this other stuff that is not applicable are shaded out. So if you find yourself not being able to click on the type of file that you want, you probably have the wrong type of source. All right. Same page is the name of the track. And if I scroll down here, I can change the speed of its playback. All right. Or if it was a video, it would play a little slower. But once again, this is just our theme song. All right. So our theme song is here. Now, you guys can see that theme song is making noise somewhere, but I don't believe that you all can hear it. So what we need to do for every one of our sources is click on this triple dot, go to Advanced Audio Properties. And right now we see that the theme is active. I don't have any volume changes to it, so it's just going to play as the file is. Now, do I want it to play mono? Sometimes, for example, if I'm using a microphone, I want to click on my microphone and make it mono so my microphone doesn't accidentally send a left-only or right-only channel because it is a mono sending device. So most times, if we're going mono into our interface, we don't have those issues. But sometimes we do. So depending on what your content is, sometimes clicking mono is helpful because people also will be engaging your platform on a host of different equipment or hardware, etc. So sometimes hitting mono, and it kind of ensures that they're going to get a certain quality of your audio without parsing out in a stereo, which could be lost. For example, if I'm only listening through one earbud. All right. So we'll just hit mono for now. All right. No offsets. Now I need to change this from monitor off to monitor and output, which means I will hear it here in studio, and I will also hear it as a listener or a watcher. Now, if I want to have monitor only, meaning I only hear it in studio, I can make that an option as well. All right. But I want to hear it, and I want you guys to hear it. Click on that. Close. Now, let me see. Is that playing? Let's go back. Somebody tell me in the chat, do you hear any music coming from the theme? I can say I don't think so because I'm looking at my hardware and it's telling me it's not. So let me double check, make sure I have my audio set properly. All right, so this is always fun when you have a tech issue. Talk amongst yourselves. Give me 15 seconds. Thank you. You don't need the whole 15 seconds. I had changed my audio interface settings. So now I believe you all should be hearing audio. I hear it in my monitor feed, so I believe you all hear it. If you do not hear it, let me know. If you do hear it, let me know. And while you are telling me that you do hear it, you can also change its volume here in the mixer. All right. And as you can see, as I bring the volume up, it gets louder. bring it down, it gets lower. So right now, we're just going to set this at a -4. All right. Now, once again, if we click on Advanced Audio Properties, I can type in a number. So instead of -4, I want this to be at -6 dB. I can type that in, or I can use the little arrows to change that. All right. So as you can see, because we had that on loop, that came to an end and it's starting itself over. All right. Now we go to host and we go back to intro. You can see how the music dropped out and came back. Now, kind of look, I'm gonna set this right here. All right. That's where our track header is. All right. Now I go to host and I go back to intro. You see how it is still there. Once again, it picked up where it left off. It didn't restart. All right. So we have the audio in for that. All right. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our scene for our host. Our host scene, once again, has single speaker with branding on scene. All right. Now, we're not going to do the logo branding right now, but we're going to bring a video in. And just because I can, we're going to use my laptop's camera. So I'm going to type in FT for FaceTime. I'm using a Mac. And I'm just going to use the camera off of my laptop as the temporary host camera. Now, if you had another camera plugged in, what you would do is you would name it whatever you want to name it. And then in the drop down, if any of these different cameras were applicable that you wanted to use, you would select it. I'm using my FaceTime camera. All right. Now it has some different options for the presets. All right. I'm just going to check the 1280 by 720 because that's what, I don't know why. I know why. And I think there's some things that I didn't go back and change, but we'll talk about that in a second. All right. So now I have video in. So you can see the top of one of my amazing shirts that I love that represent the C4. So shouts out to all my C4 folks once again. You see my name, you see Dom's name, and it has Lisa's name and Ty and Sambaza and some other folks. Denise is on here too. We got our own roster t-shirts. Anywho. All right, so we have our host scene set up. We'll come back and do the branding later. All right. For our forum, we want to bring in that same host. All right. Now what I can do is I can go to video capture, and instead of creating a new one, I can add the existing, click on it. All right. Or, and I'm going to show you guys this now. All right. I'm going to go back to host. So actually, half step back. I'm going to delete this out of forum. So forum, we're going to act like we haven't got there yet. For host, I'm going to do a little cropping. So you see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 anchor points on this window. All right. In this corner, if I click and hold, and I can now enlarge or smallen my window. And you could tell because I clicked and held at this anchor point, everything moves in relation to this being the anchor point that is directing the movement. All right. That's just clicking and holding. If I hold shift and then do that same thing, you can see there's a bit more wiggle room that is being done. All right. So this is no shift. All right. This is just kind of in and out on that axis, excuse me. And then with the shift, you can see it's a bit gummier, I guess I could say. You could see there's a lot more change when I go in and out, up and down at that anchor point. All right. So depending on what you're doing and how you need to change the window, that is how you do that. Once again, if I just want to make something smaller, I drag it in, and you can see that those dimensions stay in that rectangular formation. If I hold shift, I can now make that rectangle vertical long way, or I can make it horizontal long way, or I can make it an actual square, etc. All right. Third thing to know, hold Option or Alt. Once again, depending on if you're using a Mac or PC, Alt or Option, and then click and move. You see how those green bars come in. That lets you know that you have cropped part of your source or content. So the same way we would say, for example, that I want to be able to crop out. Well, I got a big noggin, so you can't crop that out. But I want to bring this down just the top. All right. And I want to bring this in on the side. And then I want to cut out some of this background. All right. I want to tighten up this shot. Sorry, Lisa. Sorry, Dom. I'm cutting you out of the shirt right now. All right. So imagine I just want to crop that. So now you see those green sections, those green lines around, that informs you that you have cropped part of your image. All right. Now I can still hold the corner and now move that corner, move this corner or this corner. And I can also still hold shift and move the whole thing. So I still have all of these cropping and stretching functionality, but depending on what I'm trying to do determines how I need to do it. All right. So part of why I went back to host to do that, because also as you move through a little kind of, I don't really want to call it a hack. It's really actually just how computers are made. But I can click on this source, Command or Control C, whatever your copy C function, whatever your copy function is. So if you're on a Mac, Command C. If you're on PC, Control C. All right. So Command C to copy it. I go to the scene that I want to put it in, click in the space of my sources, Command V or Control V, whichever is applicable. So once again, let me make sure I hit the right buttons. Command C. Oh, because I'm using the wrong one. Let's just do it like this. I'm sorry. I want to be thorough. I want to stay away from some of the shortcuts for now. I wanted to copy it, and it's telling me I can't, and I don't know what I did something somewhere. So normally I can go up and go copy. I can't, so we'll come back to it. All right. So what I'll just do is do it the long way, add the existing. I don't know why I can't copy that. I'm sure it's a setting that I bumped or did something to. Anywho, I'm going to come in and mess around with this. It's not going to be exact, but once again, the concept is that instead of having to do this for every scene that I want this shot in, I should be able to copy and paste it. All right. So I have myself in my forum and myself in my host. All right. Now, outro is going to have the song back. So click media source. I don't want to add, I don't want to create a new one. I want to just add what we have. So once again, you see the theme song shows up in the outro. All right. Now, jumping back to the host scene. Because this is the host scene, I'm going to make myself full screen. Now, if I pull off, you see on the side there, you have those chevrons or hash. That lets you know that you have content that is off the screen. Now, that will not be seen by the audience, but it is, once again, just OBS letting you know that you are over the margins. You are a habitual overline stepper, and it's asking you to get yourself together. And that's how it does that, by showing you those little chevrons, all right? Now, if you have a reason to have it over there, that doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't harm anything. It doesn't do any damage. It's just letting you know that part of your image or your content is outside the boundaries of the production space, all right? Now, let's move to the next phase of things, all right? Actually, I'm sorry. I'm skipping something. Filters and effects. Now, we have, all right, so I'm going to pause this now. We have filters and effects for audio and visual components, all right? So for theme, for example, we'll click filters, and because that's our theme song, it's audio. You see here we have audio video filters. We can click on that, and we have a series of different filters we can plug in. So if I want to plug in an equalizer and click OK, this equalizer will come up, and I can touch, or I can do some additive or subtractive EQing, all right, if I choose to, and that'll play on that track, all right? Or if I want to put in a compressor or a limiter or a nose gate, gate or gain, or once again, depending on what the audio source is, if you want to touch things up. So for example, if you have a guest and their mic is a little low, you could put a little compressor on it so your audio is a bit balanced with all your guests. All right. Now this says effects filters, and most of these are not applicable because there's no visual element in that song. But if I wanted to do something with an effect there, and I'll come back to that when we have a visual element, that's where I'll click that. All right. So moving to host. All right. Now, once again, I've already cropped this, so I'm not going to change it. Now, I know some of you guys can see over my shoulder there. There's that green screen. Well, that's the black part. This is the actual green screen. I can't reach it, but you see it back there. So that's an actual green screen. All right. I'm going to leave that green now, so as we go through and pull in these other video elements, they don't get confusing. All right. And I'm going to also show you something I really love about OBS when we bring our guests in. All right. Our forum has me here, and I'm going to put our two guests right there. So it'll be sort of like a pyramid. And then we're going to have our theme music and our credits and all that for the outro, so we don't need a visual element. All right. So that's filtering effects. We'll come back to that again when we start to incorporate more video and visual elements. All right. The next thing I want to talk about, once again, thank y'all for tuning in. We're roughly halfway through there. Hopefully this is educational and not too boring. But to be very honest, one thing that I learned as a teacher, specifically teaching music, like no matter how much fun I want to make this, like learning like the building blocks of things sometimes just isn't fun. But hopefully this is insightful and helpful. So once again, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. I will try to get to them throughout the presentation. If not throughout, I definitely have time at the end. But the next thing we're going to do is we're going to talk about transitions. Once again, basic transitions, add-ins, and overrides. Now, as I mentioned, our transitions are very basic as far as what comes with OBS. Simply fade and cut, all right? Now, you can use those. You can move from scene to scene with those, and it's all good. It's all gravy. No problem. I want to make a quick change just because I'm seeing something that I don't like, and I want to fix it. But also, I want to be sure that inside of our narrative energy, as we move our production through, I don't want to just use cut and fade just to move to the next shot. I want to be intentional with using them as kind of passive narrators. So how we're going to do that is anytime that we move to our host scene, we're going to fade to the host scene. So no matter where we're at, we'll always fade to the host scene. When we go to our presenters or our forum, we're always going to cut to this. No matter where we're at in the production, when we go to this shot, we always cut to this shot. And then if we're going to our intro or our outro, we will always fade to the intro and outro. Now, I can always select cut and then go to forum, select fade, and then go to intro, and it'll fade. And I like my fades a little tighter. I'm a 90s kid, so I need a tight fade. Excuse me, inverse of a tight fade. I need my fade to be, melodramatic and not super quick because it feels like a cut if it's too fast. So that's a 1500 millisecond fade. All right. And then, of course, if I change that to cut, we can see cut. All right. Now, I can select my transition and then select my scene, but that's two steps. Let's make it one by using what is called a scene override. So for each scene, we're going to create a scene override, which tells OBS anytime you go to this scene, these are the transition that I want you to use. So once again, control click or right click, whichever is applicable for your platform, the intro. And you see here where it says transition override. Right now it says none, which means it does not have an override programmed, but we're going to put one there. So our intro, once again, we're always going to fade to our intro. So we select fade, all right, and we're going to go back in and shift our fade to that 1500, all right. Now, of course, we could use the arrows, but we can just type it in, all right. So anytime we go to the intro scene, no matter what scene we're coming from, into intro is always a fade. We're going to do the same thing for outro. So control or right click, all right. I'm going to type in 1500 and then fade. So we always fade in to intro, fade in to outro. We also said we want to fade in to host. So transition override, fade in to host. I didn't change the time frame. So this one, I'm going to make it a little less drastic. So let's make it 700 milliseconds transition time. All right. And we're going to always cut to host. Excuse me, cut to forum. So I've gone in and done the scene overrides for all three of those. So once again, no matter what scene I'm coming from, into those scenes are always our overrides. And as you look during each transition, if you look here where our scene transitions are, you'll see that that grays out because it is not using that transition. It's not using the default. It's using whatever the override is. So you'll see that gray out for a second, and then once the scene is fully in, you'll see the default kick back in. All right. So now let's keep it moving. Let's keep it moving. Overlays and graphics. All right. Our lower thirds, logos, green screens, and chat boxes. All right. We're going to talk about chat boxes in two different kind of contexts. This first context is if we want to put a chat box on the screen for our viewers to see. So if I'm going live on YouTube, sometimes it's fun, or Twitch or whatever, sometimes it's fun to put the chat on the screen as well, because for myself, I multi-stream. So sometimes the chat that's happening in the Twitch app or in the YouTube app isn't visible if you're on my website, because I might be multi-streaming to YouTube, Twitch, and my website. So if you're on my website, you can't see anybody chatting. Now, you can't respond regardless, but you may still want to see the chat so you can see what the community is saying or what the conversation is in the chat as the stream is going from the website, even though, once again, you can't respond. So that's the chat box we'll be using in this context, all right? So going back to our OBS layout, we're going to start with lower thirds / logos. We're going to build in logos, all right? So first thing we need to do is we need to bring in the logo for our introductory scene. All right, so we're going to hit plus and image. Once again, our logo is a standard stationary image. So we're just going to do logo. Let's just do logo 1, because I think we have a couple that we're going to bring in. So logo 1 is what we'll call it. We're going to browse, and in that same folder here, UEF has a primary logo. I'm going to highlight it, click on it, and you see it. Now, as you can see, we don't see anything here, but you also can see those hash marks that I was telling you about, because once again, whatever format I have set as the output for, and I can actually check that in a second, the output dimensions for our stream and the output or the dimensions of this file itself may not be the same. So he probably has this as a 1920 by 1080. And right now, let me look real quick, because I have a feeling we're 1270 by something else. Nope. All right, so I know what I did. Cool. So when I set this up, I forgot to do something. It's all good. It doesn't matter, because our output is what it is. So we're going to use this logo. And once again, I'm holding shift and I'm just enlarging this whole logo to cover the window. And I have snapping settings that you can make more or less sensitive in settings, but my settings let me know when this is perfectly centered. All right. Now, because there's all black background, or actually I believe this is, from what I remember looking at it, it's actually transparent, not black. I don't need to have it stretched out as much. So I can make it a little smaller. I can still snap it to the center, because the transparent background of both the image and the blank program make it look black. All right. Now, one thing to remember, whether you're working in Canva, whether you're working in Photoshop, Adobe Premiere, all these other things, we do have to keep in mind our sources visually from top down is front to back. So as I add more video or visual elements, I have to be sure that I have them lined up in an order that the things that I want to stand out front are out front, and the things that I want to be in the background are lower down the list. Audio doesn't matter, because there's no visual element to our audio. However, as I mentioned, if I have a file that has audio clip or a input like a camera that has audio along with it, I do need to keep in mind that I need to be visual minded in the ordering of those things. The audio is fine, because the audio shows up in our mixer and we can mute and or do whatever mixing we need to do. So that's not a problem. But keep in mind that OBS does follow that. All right. Our next scene, our host scene, all right, is going to have the host, and we're going to have branding as well. So for this one, let's bring in that second logo. I can't remember what it looks like, but we're going to call it logo 2. We're going to hit the browse, and wherever on your computer you have these different files, you can pull. So if you have stuff on the desktop, if you have something in your other folders, if you have a USB drive in, if you're pulling it from the cloud, whatever the location is, you can pull these things in. All right. I just happen to have all of these things neatly ready for me where I downloaded them. And once again, Those hash marks are letting me know that my image is too large for the canvas that I have laid out for my production. But never fear, because I'm smarter than my computer sometimes, and I can fix that. All right? So now we got to decide where we're going to put that. For now, we're just going to put it there, and we're going to hide. Now, once again, don't forget we can crop. We can do some different things. Sometimes cropping is helpful, even if it's just to give us a hard edge for our snapping to work as we bring in those other components, all right? Or if we want to line things up. So sometimes we only use the cropping for the sake of helping with our alignment, all right? I don't know which looks the best right now. None of these literally look great, but let's just put it here for now. We'll come back to it, all right? Now, this is applicable, once again, to all of your lower thirds. So most of you probably have some sort of branding that you have. You can bring in those branding pieces and bring them in, whether it's your logos, if you've already built lower thirds in Canva, or if you've done things in Final Cut Pro or Adobe or whatever platform you use to create this content. You can just load those in. You don't have to do anything in OBS as far as creation. With that being said, I do 99% of my creation outside of OBS. In my opinion, OBS is not a creative platform for like creating images, creating lower thirds, or any of that stuff that we have, like Final Cut, Canva, et cetera, et cetera. OBS is great at the production and the streaming and the broadcast. It is crap, in my opinion, for anything creative in the terms of creating assets. Now, you can do some very minimal things. I don't do them. You do with that what you wish, all right? So, once again, you see how I moved the window over top, the camera over top of the logo, so you can't see the logo anymore? That's an example. We want to make sure we have things from the top down, meaning the front back, as we build out, all right? We're going to do this here. We're going to use that same logo from the second scene. So we click add that second. All right. Now what I want to do is I want to try something, because something didn't work before, and I want to see if I was just tripping or what. So here, I want to be able to copy that. I don't know why it's not letting me copy. There's something going on in my settings. Anyway, I should be able to copy that. Don't know why I can't. Might just need to refresh my laptop since it's been sitting open all day. But anywho, since I can't copy that, let me do a quick edit to bring our logo in that we're going to be using for our guests. And I think I was supposed to bring our guests in, and I forgot earlier, so we might have to take a half jump back in a second, all right? But we're just going to put this here. And once again, because it has a certain type of background, which seems to be transparent, half of our logo is not showing up. So I'm going to fix that here in a second. All right, so what I was supposed to do earlier, and I'm gonna do that. So, well, let me rephrase. I'm gonna finish this section of overlays and graphics, and then I'm gonna go back a half step because I left something out when we were talking about our audio and visual sources. I apologize. No big deal. We'll figure it out. And then on our outro, we're gonna use that same logo that we used for the intro. All right. Now, normally I would copy and paste it so it looks exactly the same when you go through the different scenes, but something's acting funny, and I got to do it manually. But normally, like I said, you would be able to copy that so it looks stationary. So as you move from scene to scene, your different assets aren't morphing into different sizes as you move, unless you want them to intentionally. I'm not going to apologize. I'm going to apologize because I don't know what I did, but I'm not going to apologize for OBS because I'm sure it's operator error. All right, so now we have our intro, have our host. All right, let me go back. I'm sorry. Our theme has been paused. So we have our intro with our audio. All right, jump to our host. Now, the only reason why we're still seeing this bar is because I have it highlighted. If I click on this, you'll see around that. And then if we click here, neither one of those highlighted, you'll see without any level of, I don't want to call it distortion or whatever, but all of those little bars are out of the way so you can see a clearer image of what's there, all right? Forum and our outro. And once again, our outro has the music along with it, all All right, we're gonna add credits here later, but I'm gonna take that step back now. So one thing that I did not do that I need to do right now, and I apologize, we're gonna take a half step back. When I talked about sources and assets, I talked about visual sources and video sources, and I talked about browser-based sources, all right? I need to bring in the browser-based sources, which are going to be my guests. Now, once again, a lot of us use StreamYard, Ecamm, et cetera, and it allows us to bring our guests in, whether we use those, interview those guests one by one, or bring them in kind of like a Zoom setup, or even use Zoom so we can have several people available at once. Once again, OBS is free. This browser-based source that I'm going to use and show you is free as well. So if you are using these other things just because they are the opportunity for you to have multiple guests, consider using something else. Or consider maybe changing what plan you use, because you may not need it if you can get, say, 10, 15, however many guests for free versus paying on that next level up, et cetera, et cetera. Once again, I'm not trying to count nobody's pockets, but keep that in your mind. So in our forum scene here, we're going to hit plus. All right. We're going to hit browser. For now, we're going to call this guest 1. All right. And there's information here. All right. We're going to come back to that. We're just going to click OK for now. All right. I'm going to hit a plus browser, and I'm going to have guest 2. All right. Same thing shows up here. All right. Now, right now, I have 2 windows that are going to be my guests. All right. Now, if I click on guest 2, it lets me know that's my guest 2 on that side. If I click on guest 1, it lets me know my guest 1 is on the left side. All right. I'm going to rearrange these so I always know that this is guest 1 and this is guest 2. All right. And then the logo is up top for now. All right. So let's just bring these in, snap to the middle, and bring this one in, and it'll snap. All right. Now, it's not perfect, I know, but the idea is to show you how. And let's have a little separation for that. All right. So now, guest 1 is going to be a browser source. Now, to use this next part, what we're going to do is we're going to open. I always suggest using Chrome. People like Firefox, people like Safari. I'm not going to tell you what to use. I'm going to suggest you use Chrome. All right. You're going to go to your Chrome browser. You're going to type in VDO.NINJA. VDO Ninja, Video Ninja. All right. Type that in, and this will come up. This is basically going to be how we create that green room or that multiple guest setup that a lot of us use on StreamYard and these other platforms. All right. Now, I'm not using StreamYard or any of these by name because I'm trying to call them out. I'm aware that that's what a lot of us use. All right. So I'm going to start by creating a room, basically creating a green room. All right. I don't have to name it, but I'm going to name it UEF. All right. We're going to call it UEF. If I want to have a password, I can. I would enter that here. Guests can see the director, but not other guests' video. That means basically, if I'm a guest, I'm going to be looking at my camera or my screen, and I'm only going to see the director. I'm not going to see the other guests. So if there's 5 other people on the panel, I don't have to watch their videos or it's going to be set up so I don't see their other videos, because that means there's less work for my device to do. I don't have to process all of that other data. I'm only processing the video from the director. All right. Or I can have it to where I want them to see each other because I want everybody to engage and interact with each other. All right. So once again, whatever's applicable, click that. The director will be performing as well, appearing in group scenes. That's less applicable because I'm not setting up a group scene. But if you are going to be running the show and in the show, you want to click that, because if you use the group scene option, you want to be sure that your window or your camera shows up with the composite of the other ones. All right. I don't click either one of those. I'm going to enter the room as the director. All right. So now I am basically in my green room, or in the UEF control, the control center for the UEF room. All right. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this link, and I'm going to run to my Gmail, and I'm going to send myself a secret message by, say, subject is links. I'm going to post that link, and then I'm going to close that out. Why am I going to close it out? Because now it's in my drafts, and I'm only going to really send that to myself. So hold tight. 15-second break. I got to reach over to this other computer and load up our first guest, and you'll see it start to populate as I do this. Talk amongst yourselves. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So now, as you see, we have the first installment or the first appearance of one of our guests. Now, a lot of you might be saying, oh, he ain't doing nothing but switching the camera from one view to another. I'll show you in a second that I have not done that. I took this link and I sent it to myself, and on a different laptop that has this camera on it, I clicked on that link, and the same way I would with StreamYard, Zoom, Facebook Live, Ecamm, et cetera, I chose what my video source was, I chose what my audio source was, and it lets me in the room. All right. Now, as the director, I can cut the camera. All right. I can mute them. I can do a lot of different things. All right. I have that control. All right. One thing that's important, and the most important thing to me, is this link. Copy solo view link. All right. So, and as you can tell, my shirt is reversed. I'm gonna leave it reversed just so we know that I'm not trying to scam nobody. All right. Copy solo view link. I want to click that and copy that. Now we're gonna go back to OBS. Guest one. Click on that, and you see where that says URL. I'm now going to plug that URL in, and I'm gonna make it 1920 by 1080. All right. Now there's other settings, but I'm not worried about those right now. And you will see that my video is here. Now my video is also creating a secondary audio, so we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to go in and I'm gonna change that inside of as the guest would. So now you can hear me through my original mic, and you can see I'm talking in the video that I'm pointing at, but you don't hear it. And one thing that I want to show you guys here in a second, just so there's clarity, is as I'm cropping this down, you can see in the audio mixer section that I do not have audio from this component showing up. And I'm going to be absolutely honest with you, I don't know why it's not showing up. Something is clearly bugging out. I'm not tripping. But you should see this. And once again, here are my settings for me to mute and that's why. Well, no, that's not why. But anyway, this should be showing up in my mixer. I'm not sure why it's not, and it's kind of bugging me, but we're going to keep moving. So in the studio, I can decide whether I want these monitor on, monitor output, et cetera, et cetera. All right. Theoretically, you want to be able to hear your guests while you're talking to them. So you want those monitor and output so you can hear them and the audience can hear them. All right. So that's what you would set for both your, for both your guests. All right. All right. So now we have guest one, who is this MacBook that's on the table in front of me. If it helps at all, you can now see that this camera is my GoPro. All right. This camera is my guest. And I have another camera over here that I'm about to join in. So give me one hot second. I'm going to join this camera in as guest two. And we are going to keep it moving. Talk amongst yourselves. Thank you. Now, this next camera that I'm going to bring in is my second camera. All right. Now, I have intentionally chosen a really bad camera angle because I want you to know that I'm not like trying to scam you, and let you know once again that we can always crop things. So if we don't have the perfect angle for a camera, there's still a little bit of things we can do. But I'm using this camera angle on purpose because it's a horrible angle and it gives you a little behind the, and that's what I didn't do. So if we go in control audio via OBS, I didn't click that earlier. That's why I was tripping. So we have audio from guest 1 and guest 2 would show up there. All right, now back to guest 2. Let's get this cropped in. And I see the time frame, so we're going to move a little bit faster without rushing. But, uh-oh, I think my camera cut off on me. No. Oh, maybe it did. Oh, we'll find out here in a second. Yep, it did. Why did it do that? What happened here? We'll come back to it. Give me a hot second. Double check that. And something's going wrong. I don't know. I'll come back to it. This is really like not helpful when you're trying to advocate for a platform. Nope. I want the. All right. So yeah, I can't speak to that, and I hate to. It's really goofy. Let's come back to it anyway. So the other camera that I'm not seeing, and I don't know why I'm not seeing, should be showing up here the same way this camera's showing up, because you see the block there, so I know it's connected, and that would be entered here. And what I did is I entered that as well. So I'm sure some of it is tech issues somewhere anyway. But with that being said, here is our logo. And what I'm going to do, just for the sake of time, is create a color source. And that color source is just going to name color source. And I would select a color, all right? And I'm going to have it be that gold, all right? But I want it to match the gold in the logo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make this a block that runs behind me. And I'm going to do a little bit of cheating. So first I'm going to move this over, all right? And then I'm going to go to color source, properties, all right? Select color, and you see the little dropper there? I'm going to click on the dropper, and then I'm going to move out into one of those pixels and highlight that pixel. So now I've matched the color of the logo. Click OK. All right, I'm going to move this bar on top, and now I'm going to move it to the bottom so that bar runs underneath. All right. Now, I know that doesn't look great, but for the sake of just showing you how these things work, you can then, I could bring in the other logo, et cetera, et cetera. I'm really mad that this guest is not showing up properly. I want to do it on maybe I can do it on my phone real quick while we're doing other things, because I've never had it give me this issue. And of course it does it in front of company. Don't it always acting up in front of company? Ain't that something? Anywho. With that being said, if you have questions, please throw them in the chat. We are nearing the conclusion of this tutorial, and once again, I appreciate you guys coming to hang out and hopefully learning something. Hopefully it's helpful. Why can't I open the link? Thank you. We're going to do this from my cell phone just so we can make sure that there's no foolery. Let's use my front camera. Yep. No audio. Yep. And start. So now I have another camera. Where can I put this? I don't know. We'll put it somewhere. We'll put it here. So we have another one. And you can see this camera here in front of me. And you'll see it show up. So now, for guest 2, we're going to replace it. So if I go back here, now you see I have the 3 guests. We're going to replace that guest 2. All right? This is in the way. So we're going to click and drag it. click here. I got that copied. We're going to go into guest 2, and we're going to replace that guest with a different guest. All right. Now we have the 2 guests. Now we would keep going and adding more guests or whatever, all right? So right now, if we're in Video Ninja, we have the 3 guests. We can see this. We don't know what's going on with this guest, but, something's going on there. So we can make them leave. We can mute them. We can do all these different things, all right? For now, we're just going to ignore them. And now I have these 2 guests. Now, if I wanted to have more guests, of course, I would just I would just copy those additional guest links and plug them in. Cool. So, only thing left now is to jump forward. Now that we have the logos, all right, is how do you get the plugins for the audio monitor? So, audio monitor is a plugin itself, and I'm glad you asked that. And I'm going to explain that actually here in 1 second. But because audio monitor is only needed in certain situations, and if you're doing a recording of a podcast, bringing in guests, or doing a live stream, you don't need the audio monitor plugin. But if you're doing something to a third party, that's when it really comes in handy. So my FaceTime camera on my computer does not have an audio component, so that's why it's not showing up here the same way it would if it was my Panasonic or some of my other cameras. All right. If I have my guests had audio on, they would show up here as well, and I could control their audio here. Now, one thing I want to share about this that is really cool, and can I get a better shot, is, for example, if I have, as was mentioned, there's a green screen behind me, and I left that green screen in the shot to let you know that it's there. Now, if I have someone who has a green screen, but their technology does not allow them to do the chroma keying, I can do that for them. So we're going to go into Guest 2. All right, we're going to go to Filters, Effect Filter. We're going to add it, and we're going to chroma key. All right, that's our green screen. Now, if you want to use a blue screen or a custom color, feel free to change these settings. But now I'm going to plug the green screen in for this camera. Now, I did that from the director's booth, from the control room, from OBS. This camera is not doing that. So now if you take this camera and you see that is normally green, all right? Now that funny orangish, that's an orange light, but it's shining on the green screen and gives you that distortion because it's no longer the green of the green screen. This is actually black behind me, as you can see in the regular shot, and there's a green screen there. And once again, you can see by the pixelation and the shading that that's where the lighting is hitting that green screen and making it less than that 00FF00. All right. So once again, if you have guests who don't have the capacity to send green screened images, if they have the green screen or have that little, I don't know, I call it the Huey Newton, but like the wicker chair, but it's like a regular chair, but the big green thing you put behind you, like just to circle, like if they got the black power green screen, you could put that behind you and don't have to worry about having your device as a guest do any work. You can just use OBS, put that green screen filter on their camera. Now, be aware that it does not pick out just the green screen. So if they have a green t-shirt on, it looks like their t-shirt is now blacked out, or besides any letters or whatever. Or if they have other green things behind them. So once again, you want to use that carefully, but understand that is an option for you if your guests don't have the capacity to process a green screen, but have a green screen behind them. They can put up the screen and you can do the chroma keying for them. All right. Let's keep it moving. Keep it moving. I'm aware of the time frame. Let's move to, we've done overlay and graphics. All right, we got pretty much our whole production set up. This is the beef, or the most important part theoretically, is moving to the live production. All right, so with OBS, in terms of live production, we do three basic things. All right, so one thing I'm not going to talk about much, but do want you to be aware of are your RTMP settings. All right. That basically is the information, those of you who use Twitch or YouTube or some other platforms, that's basically the information that your broadcast software needs, whether it's browser-based software or hardware-based software, needs to send your feed out as a live stream. So depending on what platform you're sending your stream out on, if you're going live, you need to know what that browser information is, the RTMP browser, and what your stream key is. All right. Once again, I'll say it just so it can be said. Your stream key is very important to keep private. It's almost like the password of your Instagram profile or your Facebook page. If somebody has your stream key, they theoretically don't have to have your RTMP server. They can figure that out. And then they can stream to your channel with or without your control. And some platforms allow you to make custom stream keys. So if I have your stream key and you have a customizable stream key, I can take your stream key, change it, and be streaming to your platform, and you can't do nothing but be mad while you're watching somebody else on your channel. So keep your stream key and your RTMP information secret, or at least personal and private, and only share it with those folks that you trust with it. With that being said, I'm not going to go into all those settings, but those settings can be touched on by going to settings, going to output, going to stream, and then you would enter that information here. All right, your service or whatever. If you have a custom, it will ask you to put in RTMP and your stream key. All right. If you're going to some of these different platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Restream, etc., you don't even have to know the link. It automatically is there, and you just need to know your stream key. All right. If we are going not live, but if we're going to record a live stream, all right. If we're going to record a live stream, record for a production, we're not worried about going live. We're just going to record. Once you have all these things set up, you would hit start recording. All right. And you could have your intro. All right. You have your music playing. All right. Good evening. This is Crate Digger from Urban Educators Forum. We are doing a great show tonight. I have some amazing guests, and those guests are amazing because they're really just copies of me. I'm not going to spend any more time being silly. We're going to jump to it. I would like to introduce Crate and Digger. And you could go right into your show and go through your whole show right here in OBS. We're recording right now, as you see. And then I'll say, well, thank you for tuning in until the next episode of UEF. I'll go to my outro. The music comes in, and then I could stop recording. And just like that, I have done a recording of my production to take either right and just upload it, or if I want to do some post-production cuts, or if I want to take it and chop up clips to promote it, and whatever I want to do with it, I now have a MP4 or MKV, depending on what formats I've determined in my settings. I've determined and told it what kind of complete composite format I want it to be. So we have one of those now. All right. How do I find my stream key? It is based on your platform. So whatever platform you are streaming to inside of your profile, your account settings, it depends. Once again, I can't say specifically, but if I'm going to YouTube, when I'm setting up either the event, I'll get information in the stream key, or if I'm just going live, all that information will be available to me in I think they call it YouTube Studio or what have you. If you're on Twitch, you have to go into your account. And so depending on the platform kind of determines that. But each platform that you have the capacity to stream to, it's inside of your account/streaming setup format. So hopefully that answers your question, Lisa. And Sean. And if it doesn't, we can talk about that on the back end specific to a platform. All right. So I just did a recording of all of those things, and now they're recorded with the audio and video and all those transitions and all those things as one MOV or MP4 or whatever file. All right. If I wanted to live stream, I would hit start streaming. And of course, because I haven't set up my streaming information, I'm getting this error message. But normally I would just hit start streaming, and I would start pushing to whatever platform, whether it be Restream, whether it be YouTube, Twitch, whatever, I would start pushing to that platform immediately. All right. I have a setting inside of OBS that anytime I start streaming, I automatically start recording. So I don't have to remember, oh, I forgot to press record. Once I press start streaming, the start recording automatically kicks in. So every time I live stream, whether it's for 2 seconds, 2 hours, 2 days, it automatically records. All right. So once again, whether you are live streaming, whether you are recording or doing both, you can do that right with OBS. Now, neither, you ask, like, what is neither? Why would I do neither? What is neither? Neither is using OBS as an output. So there's times where I may be a guest on somebody else's show or what have you, all right? But I don't want to just show up as a Zoom square, or I don't want to just, and this is no shade to anybody, but like I want to have control over what my image or my window or whatever I'm presenting. I want to have control over what that looks like through, whatever what that is pushed. So for example, if I don't want to show up as simply a square and have them crop, I want to say I want to have my logo embedded with my window, so I don't have to send them assets for them to do any post-production. So if this is going live, there's no post-production opportunity. I want to have my assets in screen with me. Or if I want to have my green screen going. So I'm going to put the green screen on now. All right? And you can see the ugliness of, but if I want to have my own green screen, I could plug that in and not rely on the the control center or the director or whoever I'm a guest of to do any work. I'm sending a fully produced image to them if that's what I choose to do. All right. So how do we do that? We understand, and this is where that audio monitor comes in, Lisa. We understand that when I log on to Zoom or whatever it is, and we can log on to Zoom because it's going to come up. I'm about to get mad. Like, why I got to sign in? So my video, all right? I have all these different things that I can choose as my incoming video. One of those options is OBS virtual camera. I clicked on it, and you see it's giving me basically a broken link message. All right. So I'm going to go back to Zoom. I'm going to go back to OBS and click Start Virtual Camera. All right. The newer versions of the newer versions of OBS have this already as part of them. Years ago, and I don't mean like a long time ago, but like 2020, when I first started using OBS, we had to go through a whole protocol of virtual linkage and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thankful that I learned how to do that, and I'm equally thankful that I no longer have to do it. So I say all that to say that I can now click this virtual camera, and now in Zoom, you see that OBS virtual camera is what my OBS output is. All right? Now, in OBS, if I click the cog, I can choose a couple of different things. Program, which is the default, means whatever scene I've chosen, whatever I'm sending out, or whatever's in this program window is what is seen through the virtual camera. All right. Now, I can change it to preview. All right. For whatever reason, if I want to have my preview window be what's seen, if I want to have my scene, individual scene, all right, and it will not change. So if I click on host, that's the only scene that will push through to the virtual camera. All right. Or source. If I want to have a specific source, no matter what I do in OBS, that source, unless I change that specific source, that's the only thing pushed through. All right. I always use program default because, once again, whether I want to go through different shots of myself, whether I have jokes or little things I like to do, and my C4 folks know what those are. Like, I have all those inside of OBS and I can jump to them and back to the shot of myself. All right. So that visual element moves through my virtual camera and once again shows up in Zoom. All right. Audio does not work the same way when we talk about third-party integration, and that's where the audio monitor comes in. So what I want to say at this point is we're at the 9:30 mark. We only have a few more minutes, but I understand if time is a thing and you have to step away. I want to say thank you for joining us. If you come back, I will have the survey. Actually, you know what? I'm going to put the survey link in the chat right now. I think I can do that. I don't remember where I put it. I want to share it, and I can't remember where I put it. I know where it is. I'll come back to it. But I'm going to put the survey link in the chat. And if you want to touch the survey now, feel free. If you want to come back to it, it'll be in the chat with the comments. But I want to say thank you to those folks who were participating and were able to get anything out of this. So give me a hot second, and I'll get that in the chat for you all. But Audio works differently than our video does when we want to send it to a third-party platform, which requires the use of the audio monitor. All right. Now, even though we don't have a lot of different audio pieces actually moving, what I need to do is each one of these sources that I want to send audio along with my virtual camera, I need to click on that source, go to filters, add an audio filter, and go to audio monitor. All right. Now, the device that I want to use is called VB cable. So once again, if you downloaded OBS on that PDF, I'm going to have you download OBS, download audio monitor, and then I'm going to have you download that VB virtual cable. Just install audio monitor. You don't have to worry about like where it's going or plugging in, or like just run through the install process. Same thing through the VB. Run through the install process. It'll put it where it needs to go. You don't have to worry about deciding or making it a special place. It'll show up where you need it to show up if you just kind of let it tell you the best places. All right. So we want to click device, VB cable. All right. Click close. Same thing for guest 2. I want to have their audio pushed through to my third party. And we're going to select VB once again as the device. All right. Now, because my camera does not have an audio source, theoretically, I would come in here and I would have an audio input in all the scenes with my own camera. I would also have my own audio input, whether it be an interface, a specific mic, or if I'm using the audio off the laptop. All right. I muted it out because I don't need to hear it, but it would show up there, and I would do the same thing here. I would click filters, whether it be right click or just click the filters, click audio monitor, and I want to add that. And now I can hear myself, and you might be able to hear me. I'm going to take it out, but I can hear myself in the audio monitor feed in my ear. All right. So as you can see here, as we kind of stretch this out, guest 2, full audio to the audio monitor. Guest 1, full audio to the audio monitor. My input, I'm just going to mute it for now or click on mute, but theoretically I would do the mixing. All right. And you would see those show up. And if I unmute this and bring this up, you'll see those show up as applicable because it's muted. You'll see them show up, and track 1 is going to be your output to that. So I'm going to leave this open just for now. But now we have our video going. I'm going to go back to Zoom. Click on my settings. Now, once again, video is good, not a problem. Audio, it's asking me what device. VB cable is the device that I have for my microphone. And as you can see, that it kind of corresponds. I don't know if you really can tell, but you can see as I'm talking here and it's sending, it's also responding by showing up here. So if I switch to a different scene, all right, now you see there's my voice is coming through because that's the microphone. And unfortunately, I used a bad example because the microphone is being picked up by this specific laptop. But if I go to the theme, click filters, add the audio monitor. Let's get this out there right now. Device, VB cable. Close this out. You can now see the theme is I'm intentionally not talking so you can see that the audio from the song is causing that to register, so you know we're sending the audio from the song through that cable. So that VB cable is basically a virtual cable that we're using to take all of these different sources and push a composite or a mix of those along that virtual cable as a single audio source that can show up once again in Zoom, in Facebook Live, in StreamYard, Ecamm, whatever. So that's the neither in record, stream, or neither. If I want to use OBS solely to control the production quality of my window when I'm a guest somewhere else, that's a way I can do it by using OBS. And by using OBS this way, once again, I don't have to stream nor record myself. Now I can record myself, so I also have a backup of what I'm sending. So if something happens, the same way you have those local recording, I have a local recording of my content as well, if I choose to do that. So that is the neither. All right. So I would like to say that we are at the point where many of the folks who are educators say, like, this is our exit ticket. This is show me what you've learned. This is that thing that we come to at the end of class to hopefully know that the students in our class got something out of it. So once again, we had those different goals, those 5 goals at the top of the day that we wanted to use. All right. We said we wanted to be able to, and I'm going to read them back to you verbatim. We wanted to talk about optimizing. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'll just read them off what's it called? I'm tripping. We wanted to be able to, and now we can set up and populate scenes. So we did that. We wanted to customize the layout. We did that. We shrunk some of our windows. We moved stuff around. We brought in our branding and our audio. All right. Set transitions. We did that. We took it a step further. Instead of using the basic stock transitions, we set the overrides based on what different scene we're coming into. We talked about our production management, whether it was using bringing in the guests from Video Ninja or using the audio monitor. And then, once again, routing to an external platform. So all those things that we talked about up top, we were a little over schedule, but we completed them. So there's nothing like meeting a goal, right? So normally I would have like a applause, noise, sound effect, or the clumps, go Hercules, or I'll have something that's ridiculously silly, but yet still fun and applicable. But I don't have that right now, because I was so focused on making sure like I didn't mess up the important stuff. And this thing still gave me some problems, but we made it through nonetheless. So with that being said, I want to say a couple of things. Here's my contact card. And I'll say this at the end of nearly all of my live streams, and it's applicable here. Like, you can have the dopest car in the world. You can always crash that car, but you're always able to get another car, right? Or you can have all the money in the world. You can lose your bank card. You can have, you all play Monopoly. You can have a bank error. Sometimes they're in your favor. Sometimes they're not. But you can lose all your money. You can always make more money, but you don't get time back. So anytime people spend time on the stream with me, whether it's a tutorial, a live stream, whether it's just hanging out while I'm doing some tech testing online, like whatever that thing is that I'm doing that people say spending time watching or listening or engaging Crate is a worthy investment of my time, I say thank you. It does not go unnoticed. It does not go taken for granted. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So with that being said, I want to, once again, I'm going to go back to it in a second, but I want to remind folks that in the comments/chat, there is going to be that PDF link that gives you the quick links, the hot links, direct access to do those downloads for OBS, for Video Ninja, and for the VB audio virtual cable. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I misstated that. Let me back up. OBS, the audio monitor plugin, and the VB virtual cable plugin. Video Ninja is not a download. It's just a browser source that you go to, and then you route your guests through those links. And then I'm also going to put in the chat, and it will be part of the comments, the survey. If you complete the survey, and I ask you please, 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 it's not long at all. If you can complete the survey and then share the survey, it allows me to change things up, improve things, or if there are certain things that you want to go deeper into, I can consider putting together a tutorial for those deeper dives on those specific things. And when you complete the survey, you will get an email saying, thank you, thank you, thank you for completing the survey. And here's the PDF of the files, of the slides, excuse me. So if those slides that were basically the outlay and outline of the presentation are helpful for you, you can have access to those simply by completing the survey. So once again, do something for me, I do something for you, reciprocity. So, once again, with that being said, you can catch me 24/7, 365 on cratedigger.com. I got music, visuals, tutorials. We got a store. We got Bandcamp. We got a documentary. We got all kinds of stuff. But I just use cratedigger.com as the kind of universal portal into the Crate Digger world, Crate Digger universe. Hit me with an email, crate@cratedigger.com. Feel free to call me or text me, 614-600-2578, 614-600-KR, excuse me, 6002KR8. I did that on purpose. Yes, like old school. We used to have letters in our numbers, and I got in with my Google Voice early enough, so I got my KR8. Get it? Crate. I got my KR8 Google number. So 614-6002KR8. Call me. If I don't answer, don't take it personal. Leave a voicemail. If you're on some foolery, I'll just ignore you and block you. But if you have a legit question or inquiry, leave me a voicemail and hit you back. Text me always works better. I will hit you back at my earliest convenience. I'm very much a texter before a caller because I'm usually multitasking. With all that being said, if all of the things I said to you were like a waste of my breath, but you find me attractive, you can go to Crate Digger. You can go to Crate Digger on Instagram. I suggest you go to the eye doctor first, because if you find me attractive, I might tell you something's wrong with your eyes. But with that being said, I feel like I put some pretty cool content out on Instagram from time to time. So feel free to check out the Instagram page. But with that being said, give me a hot second. I'm going to go to my other computer and plug in the... Oh, can I do it? Nope, I can't do it from here. I'm going to go to the other computer. I'm going to plug in the link for the survey. With that being said, I want to also say specifically thank you to my brother Sean Smith S Squared for providing these assets for us to use for this exercise. And of course, everybody who tuned in, I want to say thank you, but specifically once again, shouts out to my C4 folk who came through. I appreciate y'all. Corey as well, highlighting, amplifying the promos. I appreciate that. And then I appreciate y'all coming and hanging out, supporting. So with that being said, once again, I'm the Crate Digger of the Mighty Sound Champion crew. Peace and love. One.